All right, hello and welcome everybody out to Game of the Month number 26. And this month we are talking about The Legend of Zelda Four Swords Adventures for the Game Boy Advance. So, this was really cool concept to me back in the day. I was like just barely getting into Zelda just a couple of years right before this came out. So, um, Ocarina, Majora's Mask, and then played the Super Nintendo version of Link to the Past, and then Link's Awakening on Game Boy. But this came out, and it was a great way to get a Link to the Past, and it came with this multiplayer experience called Four Swords Adventures, which was really intriguing to me because I've always been a big multiplayer gamer. And joining me to talk about this fun little experiment is the one and only SMWiz in the house.
Oh, thanks for having me.
Thanks for joining as always. So we were gonna have Sir Lulz join us this month as well, but time conflicts kept that from happening, unfortunately. So hopefully next time we could get Sir Lulz back in this Game of the Month discussion goodness. But
We
I
look forward to
picked
seeing him comment on everything we get wrong in this video.
that too, that as well. Yes. So I first experienced this one back when it came out in 2003, I believe. Capcom released this port of Link to the Past and Four Swords onto the GBA. Wiz, did you play this one when it first came out, or is this something you experienced more recently?
Yes and no. So I picked up this in '05 and played through Link to the Past, but I didn't know anyone who also had a Game Boy and wanted to play this. So I didn't play through the Four Sword Adventure until much, much later.
That's unfortunate. And honestly, not unsurprising a lot of the times too. Like, there wasn't a lot of stuff that I did link cable for on Game Boy, but this was thankfully one of them. This and Pokemon mostly. And correction to myself, I believe it was actually 2002 that this one came out, and that's what the copyright right here above my head is saying as well. So just correct that real quick before someone says actually in the comments. But anyway, so overall, very solid port of Link to the Past. But again, we're talking about Four Swords Adventure this time around. But this game let you hook up 4 Game Boy Advances to experience a 4-player little adventure for Zelda, and it has the core gameplay mechanics you expect. So you got your sword, and then it behaves kind of like Link's Awakening, where your secondary button is just optional equipment, so you can pick up like the shield, bombs, bow and arrow. But as we discovered as we were playing through this, you actually don't get the bow and arrow except in the training course. Was that right? Like, it was really ridiculous, at least in the silver playthrough.
Yeah, so we didn't get all the items in when we played through as a group. That was interesting to me.
Yeah.
And I mean, I commented, I think probably about halfway through where I was like, "Where's the bow and arrow?" It's like
Yeah.
it's one of my favorite items, and we're not seeing it.
Yeah, and the silver playthrough, it was just never in any of the levels, but it was in the training level, which is so curious. So it has to be in the gold playthrough, maybe. We didn't have time to get to the gold playthrough, unfortunately. So it is curious. It's not a very long experience, that's for sure. I think you, me, Sir Lulz, and Modwife all got through in about an hour, maybe a little over, but we did the whole game. Silver playthrough, at least.
Yeah, hour and a half, something like that.
Yeah, it wasn't
I
very
mean, we
long.
probably would have done it faster if we weren't messing with each other so much.
That's true, but that's one of the great things about it is like it has the grab mechanic. And so, I mean, I was throwing you into pits of lava and threw a pot on your head that one time. Like, it was fantastic. The
Yeah,
fact that the pot made you blind was even better.
yep. I got a screenshot of that on my Switch. I'll have to send that over to you.
Oh, it's so good. But so you have 3 main levels for this game for anyone that hasn't experienced it. So you've got essentially forest, ice, water, and volcano. And then you go into the sky to take on Vati, who is this big shadow eyeball, if you're watching the video here instead of just listening to it. And to save Zelda, you take up the Four Sword, which is what splits you into the 4 people to begin with, and then you're essentially just getting the fairies and then taking out Vati. So again, very stripped down Zelda experience, but a full Zelda experience in its own right. So very cool. Like that we actually get this little mini story going along with it, on top of the multiplayer mayhem.
Yeah, I wish I'd had a little more time this month to put into it. I would have been interested to go and try the 3DS version of this because I think
Mm,
Sir Lulz was saying they'd added some content to that. It would have been kind of interesting to see,
yeah, the
revisited
DSi
all those
version.
years later, what they might have done.
Yeah. So for the 25th anniversary, they re-released it on as DSiWare as a free download that you could do for a limited time. And they made it so you could play through it in single player as well as 4-player multiplayer still. So, and on top of that, they added a number of extra things into it. I'm not aware of what those might be. I've never played that version. I do have it, and I finally got it set up so we can play it 4-player. So I really want to go through it with my kids sometime, but again, time constraints made it so I couldn't do that for this podcast, unfortunately. So we might have to revisit the DSi specific version a little bit down the road, as well as the GameCube version, because this was apparently a successful enough experiment on the Game Boy Advance that it warranted its own GameCube experience and own standalone game, which is its own thing. Like, it's actually like a more full-blown Zelda experience. You got more dungeons and all that, but unfortunately they made the multiplayer the most convoluted thing to get set up in the world, with requiring GBAs and GBA link cables. So cool, it is cool, but yeah, again, very convoluted, and I don't think I've ever done a 4-player setup with the GameCube version.
No, neither have I. It's like I had it, I've got it. I've got the link cable and everything,
Oh
but
yeah.
you know, I have 3 younger brothers, so I had 4 players, but we did not have 4 Game Boy Advances. It's like we were not a rich enough family to be able to pull that off.
And now you got people that have like 5 GameCubes, one holding the like Zelda or the Four Swords game, and then the 4 Game Boy player units that are linked up to the main GameCube. So like there's people that have like that insane setup going on, and I'm super jealous of it. I actually did play through a good chunk of GameCube Four Swords with Modwife back when
Mhm.
we were first married through Dolphin. Back when it was really hard and convoluted to kind of get the Game Boy Advance link cable stuff set up with VBA. It was absurd stuff back in the day. It's so easy now. Um, but yeah, that'd be a fun one to revisit as well, because again, it is a completely separate experience to the GBA version. And oh man. So let's get back into the GBA version though. So we
Yeah.
kind of discussed the overall way the game works. So you got like the 4 levels, you get special items in each level, and you just go around collecting rupees, solving quick little puzzles, getting keys to go through it, and then fighting a boss to end out the stage. So not a whole lot of depth there, but it works. It works really well. And one of the things I thought was kind of cool is when you die, it uses your rupees to respawn you, and the number of rupees required to respawn you just keeps going up incrementally every time you die. So you run out of rupees, it's game over. But I thought that was a pretty cool mechanic, personally.
Yeah, it was an interesting mechanic. I'm trying to remember, did besides the occasional heart container, were there really any drops for heart pieces or just hearts in general? I don't remember as we were playing through those levels having an opportunity to heal really. So
Not
it kind of,
really. There was
like every time you took a hit or fell off a ledge, it was pretty significant to lose that health.
there were heart pickups to heal. They just weren't very frequent. 'Cause, I mean, we got a
Hmm.
couple every now and then, but they weren't
I
very
think in the
frequent.
boss areas, right? I
Or
think
right before there was fairy, or was it
yeah.
fairies? Was it just the fairies that healed you?
Maybe. I don't know. It felt like when we were playing that the healing was far and few between.
Yeah, I think it was just
So
fairies. I think it was
so
just
yeah, like you're talking
fairies.
about losing the rupees, it's like it was kind of significant.
Yeah. So yeah, I think we would find fairies on occasion, and then we'd end up poaching them from each other on accident, because it's just like they appear so quickly that we don't even realize. And the same thing with those super rupee pieces. So what was it, yellow rupee or something?
Yeah, a gold
So
one or something
yeah,
like
something
that.
like that. Because you'd need to get 4 or 5 of those, and you'd get a nice rupee boost. But it's per player, and there aren't enough for every player to get them. So you'd end up cannibalizing your own potential for more rupees. So there's actually a good deal of depth that went into this, and planning that needs to be done in a group if you want to have like the best outcome. So I think that's pretty neat, and probably plays more into the gold rank again, since silver rank is like you do one playthrough silver, then you do it again with gold, and I'm sure it's much more difficult and changed up. But it's it's still really cool that that is even a thing. And some of the power ups were really cool. Like you had the shrinking ability, which was really funny because you'd be super tiny and shoving the giant links aside.
Yep.
Oh man,
You retained your, weight, if not your size.
yeah, kept your mass. You were Ant Man.
Yep. But it was kind of interesting. Like I would be curious to know um how much time they had for the game, as well as how much memory allotted still on the cartridge. Because you talk about the puzzles and everything. We already said, it's 4 levels. It takes a little over an hour as a group.
Hmm.
Um, but like as far as like the level design, like not all things are created equal. Because I mean, there are a lot of moments where it's just where the quote unquote puzzle is everybody needs to stand on this switch,
Yeah,
or
yeah,
2 people have to push this boulder. There's a lot of that. But then there were other elements where I think it was the Sky Palace, where there were tiles that only the person of the matching tunic color could walk on, and you had to like carry and throw each other around, and so like you had to kind of stop and plan your route.
yeah,
And like those areas were more interesting to me than some of the other ones where it was step on a button and continue on.
yeah, definitely. I
So
I kind of wish more of the game was designed around that aspect instead of just the last level. But like it was definitely interesting, especially considering you'd have to carry like all 3 of the other players at that one point, or at least
mhm.
one other or 2 other players sometimes. I don't quite
And I
remember.
think there was one area where one person had to pick up and throw all 3 of us, but I think that was about crossing a series of chasms.
Yeah.
So one player threw all 3 players across, then the next person threw two, and then the last one threw one.
Yeah, that's right. I think that's what it was. Sorry, we played this a couple weeks ago. My memory's
Yep.
not quite what it used to be. It was fun though. Like I definitely enjoyed it. And I'm really glad that this came out on Switch Online to make that such an easier proposition for us all to do together as well. Because this game did barely launch on Switch like a month before we played it. That's why we decided to make it Game of the Month initially. So yeah, and latency was really good, honestly, considering we're spread a bit around the country. Well, I mean, you're closer to me than Sir Lowell's, but like we didn't
Yeah,
really
but I, I
have
was,
issues.
I was, you know, I didn't say anything because I was waiting to see how much of a problem it would cause. But when you and I were playing, I was totally on Wi-Fi.
So was I.
Oh, okay. If it was a problem, I would have gone and docked it and played over the Ethernet, but it seemed to be working just fine.
Oh
So,
no, it was flawless. Like there was no issues with it whatsoever. Like it worked really well. Like I had no complaints. Like it's really cool, great functionality. So
yep.
definitely makes it the easiest way for anyone who wants to experience this version of Four Swords right now. Just load up Nintendo Switch Online, load up the GBA app, and get a couple friends and enjoy.
Yeah, so that did work really well. I enjoyed that, like you said, because it made something possible that wasn't possible 20 years ago, right?
Yeah, definitely. And I mean,
Again, it assumes that everyone's got to have a Switch, but I mean, a lot more people have Switches, and a lot of people have the online membership, so
yeah,
it's
a lot
a
easier than
pretty
GBA.
doable thing. Yeah.
Um, I mean, even in the last few years, if you wanted to just do like MGBA or VBA net play to get this working, like it's nowhere near that smooth. or at least it hasn't been in my experience. So I was really happy with the whole experience. Like, I haven't had much opportunity to do Switch Online stuff, but like that was a good experience, and that made me really happy. I also want to give a shout out to the app Sir Lols was making for little non-voice chat integration. You could load up a little web browser. Sir Lols made an app where you could like click on your link, make a lobby, and join in, and then you could like do little actions, and it was fun.
Little Link reacts, like a bomb exploding or Link shouting over here.
Mm-hmm. It was good stuff.
Yep.
So we'll need to get a link to that app and put it in the description below for y'all to check out for all of your non-voiced Zelda meetups. But anyway, graphics for Four Swords Adventure, I was actually surprised by upon release because it is combined with A Link to the Past. So I figured it would use the same assets as A Link to the Past, but it is an entirely different graphics, like completely different graphics and all that. And I was really happy about that. And it's kind of got the Wind Waker aesthetic to it, like Zelda games for a good number of years had. So once Wind Waker came out, everything up till Twilight Princess had the Toon Link aesthetic. It's not quite Toon Link, but is Toon Link.
Because it'd be interesting because so you're saying this came out in 2002. That was before the Wind Waker released.
Yeah. So like, you'll notice that Link doesn't have the giant cat eyes in this version. So, like, Minish Cap brought Cat Eye Link back. And the GameCube version of Four Swords has more of a Toon Link aesthetic. But, like, this was kind of a lead up to that without quite being that in my mind. So, I never had a problem with the Toon Link aesthetic, by the way. I liked how expressive Wind Waker was as a game. Like, all the emotions and stuff conveyed in that game was like, it really hit home for me. Like, it landed perfectly because of the whole cell shaded controversy back in the day for all of us old people to remember.
Yeah. Yeah, echoing that, it's like I did, appreciate that the art style was its own, that it was different from Link to the Past, because I mean, it would have been easier for them probably just to inherit those assets, but it gave it, for the time, a modern feel. So that was nice.
Yeah,
it's got great sprite work.
It really does. And then of course Zelda, good audio work as well, good soundtrack, good. Like it's small, but again, it does it right. It does it right. No complaints, no issues on that in my book. Like, it's fun to listen to.
Yeah, always a good time listening to Legend of Zelda music. Yeah, I mean that's the thing. Where it hits, and it ticks off boxes for Legend of Zelda. I think for people who are accustomed to playing the more traditional ones, like pre Breath of the Wild, you don't. This one didn't really have like dedicated dungeons, or not like the same kind of idea. It's more like mini games or micro puzzles.
Yeah.
And that's maybe just kind of my only complaint, is that just the game is arguably too short.
Yeah.
But I mean, it maybe treated as like a proof of concept. Like you said, it ultimately led to a GameCube game that was a full-blown Legend of Zelda adventure.
Yeah. And I think in that regard, it's kind of perfect for what it is. It's just a short little experience for you to enjoy on top of this all-time greatest classic game of forever. So, like, it was neat. It was neat stuff. And like, I'm glad that they took confidence in it enough that they did make the GameCube version. And so I'm trying to think of things that I actually have to complain about for the GBA version specifically. And outside of just needing 4 GBAs and 4 copies of the game and the link cables, like, just the equipment required to get it going is a bit obnoxious. But back in the day, a lot of people had their own link cables and a lot of people were buying the game. So it wasn't the most difficult thing to get set up back in the day versus now if you want to try to get a group together to do it, it's again just easier to use the Switch because you don't have to be in the same physical location, you don't have to have all the equipment. And thankfully this game is still relatively cheap enough. I think it's still only into the $30 range to get Link to the Past on GBA, which comes with 4 swords. So even if you wanted to do like pure original hardware for this one, like it's not too bad to get into, thankfully. But like that's definitely my biggest complaint is just so
The
many
setup.
parts needed to actually experience it. And so
Yeah. Which is true of a lot of the multiplayer for the handheld stuff in general. I
it's
mean,
true. It's
you
true.
run into that same problem if you wanted to do multiplayer on Mario Kart on the Game Boy Advance or anything really.
Yeah. Thankfully, in Mario Kart's case, it only needed one game pack, and you could do like the stripped down multiplayer. Like
Hmm.
that was kind of a thing back then. That was like where it began, like with DS download play being a thing. And
Yep.
so, yeah. But like gameplay wise, it's like you were saying it. There's no overworld. It's literally just level select. So that's kind of, eh. Like it's not traditional Zelda where you're actually traveling the overworld between the different things. Like that would have been cool to have, would have added to the length of the experience, but it might have detracted from the experience as well because who knows how much of an overworld they would have been able to put into it. Because I mean,
Plus,
even the
four of us all going a separate direction on the overworld would just be frustrating.
yeah, exactly. Like even in levels itself, like we were kind of all splitting off and looking in different corners for everything anyway. And that could become problematic at times when you have the 2-player puzzles. But I mean, even the GameCube version doesn't really have an overworld. It still uses level select.
Level select. Yep.
So I guess even they felt that having an overworld would kind of be somewhat detrimental to the focus of the experience because everyone would try to go off in their own thing, and who knows what kind of memory issues that might have caused and other things like that. So I'm not considering that a negative personally, but I can understand why people might. That makes sense.
Yeah. I mean, I guess to frame it again, bring it back to one of the things you said earlier. I mean, functionally, this is just 4 levels, right?
Hmm.
It's just 4 stages. So it's,
Technically 8 if you do the gold keys, but still the same levels,
yeah.
I guess.
So, that's just, new game plus,
Yeah, some.
but it's a very short outing. It's a very like, almost almost like a playable demo, right? Almost like a proof of concept type thing. Like
Yep.
all these things that we see Nintendo show us off when their new consoles coming out that never actually see the light of day.
Hmm.
So, Mario 128 or whatever, this is the tech demo, but they actually let us get our hands on it.
Yeah. I need to look more into the history of the development of this game as well because I'm pretty sure Capcom didn't develop Four Swords. I think they just handled the porting of A Link to the Past. But I honestly have no idea. So I would like to look into that because I'd like to know which studio actually made the Four Swords experience for this game. I think that'd be interesting to know more about. But if anyone wants to actually me in the comments about who made this game, I'd greatly appreciate it. Anyway.
I was like, and if you're gonna go to that effort, and go ahead and try to answer my 2 questions too about how much memory on the cart they were allotted and what their development time window was like.
Oh, yeah, that would be
Just,
great to know too.
I think that's probably plays into why it's 4 levels, right?
Yeah, definitely.
It's got to be memory constraint, time constraint, or both.
Yep. And I mean, I'm curious enough to know how big the ROM is now myself. So just 1 second. So let's take it. No, not that one. Stop it. Go back. So Legend of Zelda: Link's Awakening for Swords is 8 megabytes. An 8 megabyte cartridge.
Yeah,
So
but
A Link to the Past.
how much of the 8 megabytes though is used on Link to the Past? Like this is these are the questions, right? When we're
So
talking about budget and allocation of resources.
So here's where things get complicated, though, because it's not a straight one-to-one port of A Link to the Past. They added in sound bites and different things like that. Because The Legend of Zelda: A Link to the Past on Super Nintendo is only 1 MB.
Well, and more than that too, but they had to, rework the controls and they made changes to the games. Like I believe on the Game Boy Advance, the lamp can damage enemies, which it can't do in the Super Nintendo version.
Right. I'm not sure of all the
Yeah.
differences off the top of my head, unfortunately.
But yeah, so I mean it's not a one-to-one port.
No, definitely not. But considering that they really didn't like redo the sprites, they changed the way the game is framed because of the different aspect ratio for the screen.
Mhm.
But the artwork is still Super Nintendo artwork, as far as I know. So, I mean, it was a 1 MB game. It's being put into an 8 MB cartridge. Add in the sound bites, add in 4 swords. So, I mean, I'd say that, and it's probably not even using the full 8 MB cartridge. That's just so for anyone
That's the
unfamiliar
total
with
loggable space.
yeah, for anyone unfamiliar with how Nintendo does things, they offer you different sizes of carts that you can use. So if you know your game is going to fit within a 4 MB cartridge, you're going to get a 4 MB cartridge, and you're not spending more for the 8 MB cartridge. This keeps your development costs low. Versus, so you'll find a game that might be just like right there at the edge of that 4 MB thing, so they might cut something out to keep it under 4 MB instead of having to increase their cost to go up to an 8 MB cartridge. And this is what you see with the Switch nowadays as well, because they offer 8 gig, 16 gig, 32 gig cartridge sizes, and no one wants to pay for the 32 gig cartridge size except for CD Projekt Red with The Witcher 3. So that's why you'll see games include downloads instead of having everything on the cart, because they're trying to save on costs and screw the end user. So Link to the Past Link to the Past /4 Swords uses an 8 MB cart, but there might be a lot of empty space in that cart as well. It might be, I don't know. I need to actually see a trimmed version of the game. I don't have a GBA ROM trimmer right now to see what actually size is. But I mean, I'd say they had roughly 5 MB of space with all the sound assets added into Link to the Past, like 5 to 6 MB of space for this game. Just based on how big the Super Nintendo version of Link to the Past is. I don't know. These are all just fun things to think about. Welcome to our random tech talk.
Yep. I'll take the blame for that. I work in software development, and these things, make me curious.
I mean, it is interesting.
Like when we talk about Rogue Squadron 2, and what was the development time on that? 8 months.
8 months.
8 months. Completely insane.
Technically 8 months, because there were people that were working on the models and stuff before like actual development of the game started. Yeah. But it's like you had like a couple people doing that. But I mean, the full team was still working on Battle for Naboo and Indiana Jones. And then once those games finished, that's when the full team dove in. And that's the whole 8 months thing. But even still, that game is so polished for what it is.
Mm-hmm.
Other than Slave 1 and Endurance insta blowing up. That's the only thing that like just didn't make it through the polishing, I guess. Because no one wanted to test Endurance for anything. Oh man, QA on that game would have been a nightmare with Endurance. All right, you're gonna go play Endurance today. Have fun for the next 4 hours. Oh man. But even still, how did you not load up Endurance with Slave 1 and see that, oh, we just need to increase the spawn Z-axis a bit so that way it can actually come in? Like, anyway, tangent.
Crazy talk.
Tangent.
Yep. Anyways, it's a fun romp, this game, for what it is.
Indeed.
Just 4 levels of, multiplayer Zelda where you can either work together or mess with each other.
Could screw each other up pretty good.
Yep.
Oh, definitely. And then again, we only did the silver playthrough. We didn't have time to do gold. So after you do a silver playthrough, you can go back and get gold to get the true experience. And I am wanting to do that eventually because the Great Fairies kept calling you little eggs as you were going through, and it's really insulting and condescending, and you just kind of want to stab her for it. Be like, how dare you? I am the hero, and you're calling me a little egg. Anyway, I might be sociopathic. Anyway, but definitely worth a quick playthrough. Again, it's not long. Grab 1 to 3 friends, hop on Nintendo Switch Online, give it a quick go through, and then you go through again on the gold key difficulty. And I think it's just a great way to spend an afternoon, honestly. Personally, like, it was a lot of fun. So
Yeah, I think our group is what made it fun. Because the other thing is, just like I said, I have 3 younger brothers. Knowing the temperaments, and we've played games together before, don't know we would have finished it.
yeah, I can
Too much
understand that.
time would have been spent throwing each other off cliffs
Yep,
until we ran out of rupees.
I can see that I can see that happening. I think we've done that a few times. Back when we played
Well,
it when it originally released.
Yeah, we never game over our group, when
Nope.
we did this for Game of the Month, but
No, we did
you
not.
know, when we were younger, we probably would have game overed every time, just throwing each other off that edge.
Would have kept throwing you into the lava.
Hmm.
Oh man, like I didn't want to over troll, but I feel like I got a good amount of trolling out of my system.
It was a fair amount of trolling.
I think I got enough out of my system.
Should we talk about the bosses in this game, the boss fights?
Yeah. We haven't talked about the boss fights yet. We kind of touched that they exist, but we haven't actually talked about them
Yeah,
yet.
they're a little uneven.
No, yeah. They're
mean,
not hard to figure out, thankfully, but the ice
usually
one,
because you're in there with the item they want you to have to fight it.
yeah, the ice one in particular was kind of obnoxious, because you'd end up hurting yourself doing what you need to do to hurt it.
Yeah, he had a janky hitbox because there was a point where I think Modwife and I can't remember who else just kept getting frozen perpetually.
Yeah,
Well,
that was Sewell's as well.
I was apparently standing in a sweet spot where I could just keep whacking him in the face without getting frozen.
Yeah,
But,
and I mean, you had to use the Pegasus boots to knock him into the ice wall to freeze him again too, and that's what kept screwing everyone over, because you'd hit him and then just kind of go through him. That happened to me like twice, and it was just kind of obnoxious.
And then his armor broke, and we needed to hit him, but he was in the ice wall.
Yeah, and so we couldn't hit him.
We all had to kind of walk away from him and kite him to us.
Yeah, that one was obnoxious. Vati, the final boss, was a lot of fun. There's a good amount of player-specific things that had to happen on that one, because a couple of the bosses had specific color-coordinated things where only the player of that tunic color could hurt it. And so played into that aspect, everyone had to be paying attention on the same page. So a lot of fun on that regard. And then anything that required more than 2 people to actually kill was also pretty fun, since there's a couple overworld enemies where you had to use 2 people to attack it. And so that was fun. But who was the boss of the first area again? I'm having trouble remembering that one.
That's the one that I don't remember. I'm we had the plant guy with the leaves that opened up. We had Vati, we had the ice guy. I can't remember whoever the first one was. They're just so forgettable that
they are a little forgettable.
Well, I think because we just completely rolled them. That fight was over in seconds, I think.
Yeah. What was the fire one again?
Wasn't that where we fought the plant guy, or no?
The plant guy was probably the first boss. Can't remember the fire one now either. Crap. Oh, we are so prepared.
Well, this is what happens when we played 2.5 weeks ago or whatever.
Yeah.
We're old and married. 2.5 weeks ago was an eternity. You might as well ask me what happened a decade ago. You pulling it up?
I'm pulling it up. We're gonna be very.
You don't want to let.
I don't want to let it lie like this. This is not okay for me. Yeah, it's not okay for me. Okay, so yeah, the plant one was the Guardian of the Sea.
Okay.
Then the ice guy was that slug. So the fire one was just this fire guy. Huh. Okay.
This thing we destroyed him so fast that it's just completely unmemorable.
Yeah, it was like that little fire slug thing. Yeah. So we had to take it. Oh, that's right. That's right. That's right. You had to reflect the ball of fire back at him, and it makes his flame scatter. Then you can hit him.
Oh yeah, we destroyed him super
Yeah,
fast.
that's right. He was typical Ganon fight type boss. Okay. Yeah, I remember that now. All right, cool. Feeling a lot better about things. I just I can't. I can't be that
I was like,
uninformed.
it's not about being uninformed. He was a scrub. He's not worth remembering.
It's true. It's true though. So
They just pulled the Thanos. I don't even know who you are.
so yeah, the plant one would open up and have the two colors, and the two players
Yep.
would have to hit it on the sides. Ice one, you'd have to hit him into the ice wall and then attack him until he was dead. And then the fire guy was the ricochet back and forth. And then Vati was, uh,
Multi-staged.
yeah, he had a lot of different stages. He had
Yeah,
the one form, then his true form.
yeah, dodging attacks,
Yeah,
hitting. Yeah,
yeah, good
so
stuff. But I don't think I really have much to add to the Four Swords adventure discussion at this point. I think it looks great. I think it's fun to play. It controls really well. Has an awesome training tutorial to get you started on everything to understand the basics. We kind of skipped over that until after we beat the game. Then we went back and did it, um, which was funny.
which is when we got
Um,
confirmation that the bow and arrow does exist in the
the
game.
bow and arrow does exist in the game. It's true, and the magnet thing too. Like the magnet wasn't in the actual game when we played it. It was
Yeah.
only in the tutorial. And again, maybe that stuff's in the golden key area, which we didn't do. So, I mean, we only technically played through half the game, but like even that half, I still think is really worthwhile. And anything that I might get out of that from this point forward is kind of a great bonus as well.
I was like, we got a credit roll. We beat that game. We maybe didn't 100% it, but we beat it. We got credits.
That's true. It's true. So I would like in the future to revisit it on the DSi version, and then I'd still really like to get through the GameCube version because I've only made it halfway through the GameCube version even. So like that would be a fun one to get through sometime as well. We'll need to get a group together and parsec that one through Dolphin. They added retro achievements to the GameCube one, so.
Oh man.
Man. For anyone that is unaware, I've become obsessed with GameCube retro achievements, so good times.
I was saying addict.
Addict, yes. I've always been an achievement whore. Always. Ever since day one of 360 launching, I've become an achievement whore. Oh man, so many hours playing Dead or Alive 4, and I still barely got any of the achievements in that game. Oh well. Anyway, so my final thoughts, definitely give this one a playthrough. Thanks to Nintendo Switch Online and the GBA app, it's very easy to experience it in full multiplayer glory with a group of friends that have Switches and Nintendo Switch Online expansion pack. And again, I think it's a great way to spend an afternoon if you just want to experience multiplayer Zelda, and very worthwhile. But why don't you leave us your final thoughts, Wiz?
Yeah, I think it's, if you think of it as, like a really big mini game, you probably won't be disappointed going into it, giving it a try. Tempering it, it's like this is an activity you're going to do for an hour, hour and a half, unless you want to go do that golden second playthrough. But yeah, it was just a fun little adventure and serves as a precursor, I think, to, the full game we got on the GameCube.
All right, sounds good. But Wiz, thank you once again for joining me for this month's Game of the Month discussion. We will be back next month talking about Fallout 4, which is going to be rough for me. Anyway, if you'd like to join in and tell us your experiences with Zelda Four Swords Adventures, we'd always love to hear from you down in the comment section below. And I share all the fun little comments that we get with everyone that the Game of the Month channel when they happen. But if you'd like to be a part of the discussions, you can always join us in the Discord Game of the Month channel. And these discussions are fairly open for most regulars of the channel. So If you'd like to contribute to them, feel free to join us, and we'd love to add your voice to the discussion. But till next time, everybody, we will see you all back next month on Game of the Month and all the other content that hits this channel between now and then. Take it easy, everybody.